the YouTube. And I'm up over there. Apologies to anyone listening over on YouTube with the audio mistakes that were there. But yes, you bounce up to Lions on Frederick Street with tags on their neck, marked property of Emperor Valley Zoo. And the first thing you're doing is going to the good night, Rennie Hazel. The first thing you're doing is running up to the zoo and asking the zoo attendants, you all are missing some lions. We have some lions down Frederick Street. And if the zoo attendants tell you, well, you know, all our lions are counted for, you know, isn't that telling you something about the zoo attendants themselves? Blessed good night, Hollow Point, and they're supposed to sign for the ammunition. Well, I would suppose so, Hollow Point. I would suppose so, but they did an audit. Let's go on reading about this. Some things are very interesting in here. The boss went on. The military always has stringent measures in place when it comes to arms and ammunition and other equipment. The challenge is the human factor is part of it. You have people who should understand rules and functions and sometimes may not live up to what's expected. Daniel said there are no cases in the TTDF subject to disciplinary action in the last year for misuse or misplacement of uniforms or ammunition. There are no disciplinary actions currently in place. He said evidence has to be connected to a person to prosecute them, and that's something that's not easily done, especially ammunition, which would have different fingerprints on it, if at all. So, here's my problem with what he's saying there. There are two conflicting things that he's saying there. He said the military always has stringent measures in place when it comes to arms and ammunition. But then he's saying at the same time, evidence has to be connected to a person to prosecute them, and that's something that's not easily done. I would have thought that some of the stringent measures that the military has in place when it comes to arms and ammunition would actually make it easy to prosecute people who misappropriate the arms and ammunition. If the measures don't make it easy to prosecute the people who misappropriate the arms and ammunition, then the measures obviously are not very stringent. Here's what I'm thinking. Someone asked if they don't sign for these things. I'm wondering if every person that is in the chain of custody of these ammunition and arms, every person has to count and sign for what they counted for. Now you do an audit and you actually count. What they did is they went and they asked the people. They investigated by asking all the people in charge of the accounting departments about it, and they said nothing is missing. Well, obviously they will say nothing is missing. What you need to do is actually go and count it. You actually need to go and count it. If you actually go and count it and show where the part is missing and who signed for the amount that is no longer at the level it's supposed to be at, that would be something very easy to figure out to me. Kirvon says in the absence of prosecutorial evidence, the audit should have uncovered problems with the inventory. Well, the audit did not, and then I think that says that there are problems with the audit. It's like you can't mama guy your way out of this for me, or at least it shouldn't be possible. There should be no way that you are able to mama guy your way out of this, because obviously there are defense force shells and crime scenes. So what are they telling us to believe? What's the other option to believe? That gangsters out here get their metal press machines, get their lettering in, get their TTDF lettering in, and they're out there pressing out their shells. They're taking their shells out of the boxes, individually pressing TTDF clank on each shell, and then putting it back together and boxing it before they go and commit a crime. Really? You think the gangsters doing that? For what reason? Just to mess with the TTDF? The gangsters going through all of this just to mess with the TTDF? They're pressing out their own bullets with TTDF logos on them. Yeah, the gangsters are doing that all on their own. Kirvon says if audit methodology is flawed and or the army chiefs are well part of the slackness. Yes, one of those has to be true. Positive Radiation says, so the National Security Council doesn't know how much ammunition they order per year. Well, the problem is here that according to the military, they did an audit and they found out that they are not missing any of the ammunition that they ordered. None is missing. Not one. Like, to me, this should be even a greater cause for worry. It could nearly seem like the army boss is saying this, with some defense in his mind, like, to calm people, like, we are doing our jobs here. But to me, this is even more cause for worry. Okay, we should be worried that Defense Force shells are being found at crime scenes. But then the fact that the Defense Force says these shells are being found there while they cannot even account for them being missed, that's even a scarier development. Positive Radiation asks, so is all bullets being used? Well, you'd have to assume that. You'd have to assume that it has to be some old bullets being used. But either way, I would assume even old bullets would still need to be accounted for. Bullets even from the 90s, if they were still there, they were supposed to have an inventory of them. And if they go missing, you are still supposed to be able to check for them. Such a strange thing. Such a very, very strange thing. And it seems to highlight the idea that, a lot of our criminality in Trinidad and Tobago, a lot of our criminality is facilitated by our law enforcement. And that's the problem we find ourselves in. It's difficult to actually get solutions to crime when the people who are supposed to be solving crime are criminals themselves. How do you solve crime when the crime solvers are themselves the criminals? What's the solution there? PCA to probe video of alleged police misconduct. One day after Director of the Police Complaints Authority, David West, reported that there was an increase in the number of complaints of misconduct against police officers, the authority has reported that they are probing a video and an accompanying social media post which alleges improper activities by the police. A media release from the PCA on Monday reported that they were aware of a video being circulated on social media which shows 3 policemen appearing to take cash from a business place. I don't know how many of you saw that one over on Instagram. A couple videos, a couple pages shared this over on Instagram where they caught some police taking money out of people's cash registers. And I've been saying this for a while. I've been saying this for a while that the way how corruption is structured in Trinidad and Tobago with many of these law enforcement personnel, they're so bold with it that I am surprised it took so long for some blatant videos like this to reach out to the public. I find there should be videos like this on a daily basis because the corruption in Trinidad is at a blatant level. Some of these officers believe that they are so high above the law that they don't even worry about these things. And that's why they get caught like this. That's why they get caught like this. Now, I saw that someone was saying a police they contacted, an officer they contacted, had a slight defense saying that, it may not actually be what it seems, that there may have been some kind of other investigation going on there. Contacted for comment, one officer said, while the video would be investigated, he did not want to draw any conclusions based on the footage until all the facts were gathered. The video was very concerning to us. However, I want to be wary of seeing only one side of a story. I am suspicious of which officer they may have contacted for this statement. because there are there's at least one particular officer who is regularly out there in the defense of nearly every police action. You know, police could do no wrong according to some other police. Nathan, you sure the businessman who shared that video is still alive? I don't know. You see, though, this is the thing with the on the police side of it. Because the police have to function, even if they're functioning as a gang, they're a legal gang. If you go to the public, it's actually harder for the police to do something after that. If the police then go to harm this businessman, it makes it kind of very obvious that you're dealing with a very serious police racket running here that involves organized murder. And even the higher ups inside of the police in the Eastern Division, they may not want that kind of attention to go on. So I don't think that him going to public is necessarily endangering his life from those officers in that way necessarily. Going to the public may actually have been the best thing he could have done. Hollow Point says the proprietor said he reported the matter since last year together with video evidence. Yes, to the Professional Standards Bureau. He said he reported it since last year and nothing happened. But that's no surprise, really and truly. So this officer was saying that I know that several illegal playway operators were targeted over the past year, and at various places some cash was seized and people charged. So the possibility exists that the video may not be telling the entire story. It could be part of a legitimate police operation, and the cash being taken is seized and entered as exhibits for the courts. But here's the thing. There wasn't only one video shown. There wasn't one video shown. I think fatal stabbing in Tobago just now. Wow. Yikes. I think the officer here brought this defense before he saw the other video. Because I'm not sure how evidence is tagged in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think you pocket money in your lint-filled pockets, stuff it in there as bagging evidence. And that's what the video showed. They took the money out, fistful of money, stuffed it in their pocket. Stuffed it in their pocket. I don't see how that is tagging evidence. I don't buy that. How is that supposed to be evidence? It seems a bit of a stretch to me there. You're pocketing the evidence. That's how we do it in Trinidad and Tobago. Police take the evidence, shove it in their pocket, and when they reach to the police station, then they pull it out and they tag that evidence, and they're going to carry that evidence to court. Really? Richard Glubman says DSS all over again. And you know, it's ironic that you said that. It's ironic that you said that, because with this kind of police service where we're struggling to actually get the police service to protect and serve, you would hope that we at least could do it on our own. And the DSS, the founder of DSS, has found out that it's actually very difficult to do it on your own, because those very same police who may be involved in criminal activities are making it harder to live in this country. They're also making it harder for you to be able to get a weapon to protect yourself. Attorney General and Commissioner of Police in talks over DSS founders' lawsuit for FUL. Discussions are taking place between Attorney General and the Commissioner of Police on a legal challenge brought by Drug Susu founder Karen Clark over the failure of the Commission to grant him a firearm user's license. On Monday, Clark's judicial review claim came up for hearing before Justice Nadia Kanglu, who in May 2022 granted him leave to pursue his claim against the Commissioner. At that hearing, one of the attorneys representing the Commissioner, Sanjeev Lala, sought a further extension of time to allow the AG and the Commissioner of Police to hold discussions and indicate a position so he could definitely inform the court if the matter can be resolved. Listen to this. Listen to the kind of time we're talking about here. Let's see if we... All right. Clark sued the commissioner after the Firearms Appeal Board in October 2021 ordered the commissioner to grant him a FUL. He had applied for it in 2014. He applied for an FUL, a firearm user's license, in 2014. But in 2020, his application was refused. Here's the thing. At the start there, this isn't even about whether he deserves to have an FUL or not. There's no way it is reasonable that in a country as that in just now we'll deal with that, Richard Glubman, because you are wrong, you are dead wrong, you are as wrong as a ball in this case, and the courts actually have established that you are wrong. But we'll deal with that. That's not where we are at yet, Richard Glubman. You are running ahead in your defense of the police here. You have something else. You have something else to defend before you reach there. You are wrong, Richard Glubman. Wait before we reach there. Wait before you say that wrong stuff anymore. Let's defend the first thing. Before you say it's his right to refuse, shouldn't it be our right to at least get the refusal quickly? If you're going to refuse me getting my license to a firearm, at least refuse me within a month so I know that, okay, I do not qualify for this. This is what I need in order to qualify. How are you going to tell me that I applied since 2014 and it takes till 2020 for me to find out that actually you're not going to get it? That doesn't happen. You're refused. So in the first place, the idiotic nonsense about this is that it takes 6 years to process this application. In a country as dangerous as this, where you could be applying for this license because you think your life is at risk, and then 6 years in the future is when the license, you're actually getting the answer to this. You'd be long dead. Brother, what platform did you use before TikTok? None really. TikTok, I jumped on through TikTok. I used real life. But I've always been on social media. I've always been on Facebook and Instagram. So, but Richard Glubman, to get where you are here, but the commissioner has the right to refuse and the commissioner can refuse anyone. Here's the thing. So, in 2020, his application was refused. Clark then appealed to the FAB, which ruled in his favor. You see, Mr. Richard Glubman, the commissioner just doesn't have the ability to refuse anyone on a whim. If he refuses you, he has to have grounds to refuse you. And if he does not have grounds, you can appeal this to the Firearms Board. And that's who the Firearms Appeal Board. And Clark sued the commissioner after he appealed to the Firearms Appeal Board, and the Firearms Appeal Board ordered the commissioner to grant him an FUL. So it's not that the commissioner can refuse people. There's an appeal board. There's a process. The appeals board turned around and ordered the commissioner to grant the FUL. I also find it interesting that the appeals board took 1 year to figure out that they should order the commissioner to grant this. He sued them in 2021. The appeals board ordered it to happen. 2021. They refused him in 2020, and by 2021, the appeals board already ordered the commissioner. So here's the thing. Let's forget the commissioner. Let's request the firearms license to the appeals board in the beginning, because they seem to be faster at the job than the commissioner. Let's go to the appeals board from the very jump. And then the audacity and insanity of this is after the appeals board ordered the commissioner to grant the man the license, the commissioner still refused. he had to go to court to sue the commissioner for the commissioner to grant it to him. And even now that he's suing the commissioner keeps stalling and stalling and stalling. He got through to this lawsuit since 2022, and the commissioner keeps stalling, and he's stalling again because now the commissioner and the attorney general has to go into a meeting. That's their new thing. That's the headline that we spoke about at the beginning. Attorney General and Commissioner of Police in talks over DSS founders lawsuit for FUL. Are you telling me he applied for this since 2014, and the Attorney General and the Commissioner of Police now need to discuss to figure out if he can get it? I find it atrocious that the court allows this. I think the court should throw out any request for furtherance in delay like this, because you had since 2014. Are you telling me you're now figuring out your reasons? What were you doing since 2014? Since 2014, you couldn't figure out your reasoning? Kevon says 2A with robust control would be good here. It would be lovely. It would be beautiful. You see, the idea of 2A, it reverses it. Where in Trinidad and Tobago, we have to, as it were, beg the daddy government to allow us to have a weapon. With 2A, the Second Amendment in the United States, if you have a right to protect yourself, the government has to get a reason to stop you from being able to access a weapon. And that's the way I think it should be. It shouldn't be you begging to get the ability to protect yourself. It should be that the state has to find a reason to prevent you from being able to protect yourself. Kian Francis says, is it a personal vendetta they have with DSS? I don't know. It may be, but the reality is, it seems like in almost all cases, unless you know someone, in almost all cases, an application for an FUL takes a very long time. And why is that? There's no reason for it. They make it seem, and if you listen to this government, they make it seem like there's great risk in Trinidad and Tobago from legal firearms, but that is demonstrably untrue. It's not true. Four murders in 4 years, 4 killings in 4 years. That's the rate of killing, 1 per year with legal firearms in Trinidad and Tobago. 1 per year. If we had 2A, we would have had school shootings, Positive Radiation says. I don't think so. I think school shootings are, to some extent, uniquely an American phenomenon for multiple reasons. We aren't yet down the cultural path of creating the school shooters. School shooters aren't the people fighting in school videos, you know. You don't see videos of school shooters in a school fight every day. When you're seeing these school fights, those students aren't the kind of people that come in the school and shoot up the school. You understand that? School shootings are depressed, lonely, recluse, mentally ill, usually on drugs. Nearly like 95% on drugs. So there are several conditions that create that kind of school shooter vibe. Not as violent as our schools are, not denying our schools are violent. School shootings are not just violence. So, like, if you go into the south side of Chicago, where there's a high level of violence and lots of gang violence, the school shootings that you see there aren't the same kind of school shootings where someone goes into the school and aims to kill a bunch of innocent students. It's gang related. A gangster comes in school and looks for another gangster going to the school. That's the kind of school shootings you have there. We don't have that kind of stuff there. I think in Trinidad, I remember vaguely. You could fact check me on this because I can't remember this very accurately, but I have a vague recollection of one school shooting, I think in Trinidad and Tobago, and if I recall correctly, I think it was at Maple Leaf, the international school, if I remember that correctly. So, yeah. Interesting. And I don't think the 2A would increase the I'm not talking about school shootings like gangs gang shooting on the outside of school. I'm talking about someone going into school with the intention of harming multiple students, that kind of thing. I think the worry for 2A in Trinidad and Tobago would be the regular brawls that happen. So brawls that happen in villages that sometimes turn into bottles pelting and a 2x4 pulling and a blade pulling here, that could end up being a gun pulling, and that's the danger. And I agree that's an increased danger. I agree, but I still don't believe that regular law-abiding citizens would just take everything out of their mind and murder someone and lose their freedom over that. That's not generally how things go. But yes, there are risks. I'm not saying there aren't any risks involved with that. But as it stands right now, not having any weapons, there are risks here. And the reality in Trinidad and Tobago is, it seems basically like anyone who wants a weapon and is willing to break the law can get one. It's not like it's that difficult to get. While West Trinidad, who shoot first live. I think Trinidad is already like that to some extent. Like when I'm on the road and people give me bad drives, I can't even argue with people anymore on the road in peace. You know, when you see somebody driving slow on the fast lane, you can't slow down in front of them and give them another bad drive in return in peace. You know, you can't be a clown on the road in peace anymore. No. You have to be a good, respectful guy on the road, because I'm saying the amount of murders and shootings that happen so regularly in Trinidad and Tobago on a daily basis. Every single day you are driving past on the nation's roads cars that have armed people in it. Every day. Multiple people armed with guns, having murdered people before in their lives on the nation's roads. To me, I would prefer that, you know, the law-abiding citizens are likewise. That's what I'd prefer. There's a saying that says an armed society is a polite society, and that's the idea there, where everyone has it in their mind that if I harass anyone could pull out a weapon. It's not just the gangster. So gangster man rolling down the road, holding his gun in his pocket, feeling like a big boy. He knows that if he runs into the 7-seater with daddy and mommy in the car, he can't rate up too much because daddy have a Glock inside the glove compartment, and daddy actually goes to the range and daddy's not going to miss. So you know you have to bat in your crease. Even when you see daddy with his family, you have to bat in your crease. That's the idea of an armed society is a polite society. That's the idea. And I see the reality in that to some extent. Hollow Point says the way how it is now, you have to apologize even if you're in the right. Yeah. I'm not dying over a bad drive. Like, sir, I'm sorry. You go on, boss man. Go on, no. You go, boss. You do your thing. No. I'm a coward on the road. If you'd like to call it that, so be it. I'll live to see another day. No, it is to die for some stupid argument on the road. That makes no sense. You check out of life for an argument on the road. Just for good sense to prevail, on the topic of crime, I was reading a report here, a grandmother talking about the situation about crime and criminality and how she fed up talk, and she spoke to the guy, and when you listen to the family talk and stuff, and regularly man getting killed for $1, yeah. Regularly when I read these stories around crime and how it occurs in Trinidad and Tobago, I find, you know, when you hear some people talk about solutions to crime, and they talk like all perpetrators of crime are victims, I recognize that's not true. There are some people that just belong in jail. That's the reality. I think that's just the reality. And if you end up in a position where you become so kind-hearted and such a bleeding heart that you think, you know, these people shouldn't be in jail, this one shouldn't be in jail, look at the tough life you're going to get yourself in trouble. There are some people that it seems they're They're just not supposed to be out there. They don't have the constitution to be out there. And I think that's just the reality in Trinidad and Tobago. We need some more people in jail, and we need probably some more of those law enforcement agents themselves to be locked up. Hey, check Bukele in El Salvador. Yes, I like Bukele. I spoke about that earlier. You see, let me just browse on that El Salvador topic before I change from that crime. In El Salvador in 2014 or something like that, 0.1% of their population was murdered. 0.1%. That's in Trinidad and Tobago. 0.1% would be like what? What would be 1,400? Would be like if we have a 1,400 murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago. 1,400 people were murdered in Trinidad and Tobago. That was the murder rate in El Salvador. That was their murder rate. Creepy stuff. And then they got a president who was more right-wing, and he started to do something really strange. A really strange technique, a really strange crime-fighting technique he was doing there. He started to lock people up, throw them in jail. And what would you know? From something like a couple thousand people being murdered per year, they dropped to 400 and something people being murdered per year. Isn't that shocking? If you lock up the criminals, crime decreases. Wow. Astounding. Truly astounding. Astounding. And some of the ways they went about doing it have some people scratching their head. Because part of it they were saying, part of the action they were doing is some people who just allegedly bought tattoos that associated them with a gang got carried down too. If you have the gang tattoos, let's go down to jail. And I mean, you might say that, so what's wrong with that? If you have a tattoo, what's wrong with that? Well, crime dropped. That's the reality of that. So you could talk about whether it's human rights and whether people have a right and whether you should have done that and whether at the end of the day, murders dropped significantly. Could crime detection be a problem in TNT? Yeah, but I genuinely believe a massive part of the whole violent crime out of control in Trinidad and Tobago has to do with the fact that a lot of our law enforcement is corrupt. And the reason a lot of our law enforcement is corrupt is because a lot of our political class is corrupt. That's the reality. The corruption of the political class feeds into the corruption of the law enforcement, and that corruption allows for crime to run ahead. Listen, the kind of provision we have for our police service in Trinidad and Tobago, there is not supposed to be the level of crime that we have. That's not supposed to happen. Murders in Trinidad and Tobago are not supposed to be at the level they are at. That's not supposed to be happening. I think if you decrease corruption in Trinidad and Tobago by 10%, you may have a 50% reduction in murders. I believe the murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago may directly be linked to the level of corruption. They're directly linked to each other. We need decent intelligence to act, and there's plenty things slide. Corruption is a problem, but how can that be stopped or limited? Feels like the country just became ignorant overnight for some reason. Curve on with the intelligence. We need this decent intelligence to act. I recognize that actually many of the police have a lot more intelligence than you believe. A lot of what is going on in Trinidad, if you talk to officers, if you know police as friends, and you talk to police who are in and around those things, nearly every single murder in Trinidad and Tobago, police have a general storyline about it. It might shock you. Go talk to an officer. Get an officer that might trust you enough to talk to you, and they will let you know. Nearly every murder, they have a general storyline about why it happened, what went on around it. The intelligence is there. Part of it is getting actionable intelligence. That's one. And I think the second part is the level of corruption. The level of corruption makes it very difficult to actually work on those things that they have figured out, because you have to work around many people who are being fed by this criminal system. The criminal system is feeding many people. It's paying to send people's children to school. It's paying to upkeep people's side chick. It's paying to buy rims for people's new Navara. It's paying to buy the Navara on its own. Listen, corruption is paying for a lot of things. The criminal underworld is paying for a lot of things. So if as an officer you're trying to dismantle something here, you're going to affect a lot of people's money. And people don't want their money to decrease. Jonathan says it's because we have a lot of police, and I'm positive the police have resources because taxpayers. Not sure what you were saying there. How can the corruption be stopped or limited though? I think, like for me, in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, and this is a very difficult thing to actually execute because you need the politicians to do this. And it's similar in line with many of the things I almost always talk about. If you want to decrease corruption in Trinidad and Tobago, I think what we need to do is get even more free market. What we don't want is the government involvement in so many things. We don't want so many traffic laws that the licensing division has the ability to take so many bribes. We don't want that. We don't want a convoluted court system where it's incentivized to pay bribes out of it. That's the solution. If you make those systems run more smoothly, you decrease the incentive for regular citizens to engage in corruption, and therefore you cut it off at the knees. At the moment, passing these matters through the judicial system is counterproductive. Yeah, it is. It is counterproductive. But that's the nature of it. And as we were saying with the corruption on the police side, even if you get past that corruption on the police side, there's the whole reality of how our judicial system actually functions. Our judicial system is so held up, it's so retarded, it's so held back that if you're wealthy enough, it's nearly impossible to prosecute somebody very wealthy in Trinidad and Tobago. You don't see wealthy people generally go to jail in Trinidad and Tobago. It's not happening. I was referring to the statement you made when you said corruption is the reason why crime isn't being reduced. Yep. I think the Westminster system reduces the frequency of Bukele-type leaders emerging. Yes, the Westminster system is bureaucracy defined. You see, I think the Westminster system was perfectly suited for England, for Britain, for the United Kingdom, where MPs actually are members of parliament representing their areas. When you have an MP in the United Kingdom, that MP, you see this regularly, that MP would switch parties. In the United Kingdom, you don't just have the two parties. You have so many other parties in and around the mix that it allows for this Westminster system to make more sense. But when you have the Westminster system claptrapped into lockdown into the two-party system like it is in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's a division based on tribal racial politics, it nearly makes no sense. There's nearly nothing we could do to effect any change in Trinidad and Tobago. It's inevitably just going to switch between the PNM and the UNC, and that defeats the whole idea of democracy. That's not democratic. We can't vote for who we want. We could vote for who the PNM and the UNC want. That's the choices we get. That's not a democratic system. Trinidad is basically an oligarchy run by the people who run the PNM and UNC. That's how Trinidad is run. And there's nothing that anyone could do about that. Nothing. Proportional representation then, yes, but also with other factors in there. I think mainly we need decentralization. That local government reform that they've been preaching about for years now, we need more of that. Where the Tobagonians in the house, where we strip some of the power from central government and put that power into the local government. Then we could go around to that proportional government bit, and probably remove first past the post into the ranked choice voting, so that you could get multiple parties in the system, and an executive president who actually has very little power. That's the idea. The idea for an executive president is that if you have snap decisions needed to be made, like military style decisions, you have someone that could make those executive decisions. But when it comes to the daily, everyday running of the country, that's run by the local government. The best person to decide what should happen locally is a local government. And you don't have the government running the economy and planning the economy. The free market does that. That's, to me, the kind of ideal there. And then you don't have the need for people to pay to lubricate the system. So right now in Trinidad and Tobago, one of the reasons it's so corrupt is because our system is so bureaucratic. Good night, Vanna. Our system is so bureaucratic that if you have to get anything done, you have to lubricate the system. If you're a businessman and you want to clear something from the port, there are so many hurdles you have to clear that it's best you just pay somebody a bribe and get this thing done. You have to talk to this agency and carry it to that agency, carry it back to this agency and get this secretary to sign, and then carry it there and get a signatory from there and carry it to this one, and then this one would pass it, and then you carry it to this one to approve it, and that and that and that and that and that. And you have so many of these things that it increases the likelihood of corruption. That's what I think. The more of that bureaucracy you have, you increase the likelihood of corruption. Decrease that bureaucracy. One of the surefire ways to decrease the bureaucracy, and this is going to be a hard one to do in Trinidad and Tobago, is decrease the amount of public servants. How many of you would be okay with that? If you want to decrease the bureaucracy in Trinidad and Tobago, the quickest, surefire way to do it is decrease the amount of public servants. You see, what public servants do is make the bureaucratic machine churn. And you see, you have to think about the incentive structure of the public service. The public service hires people to give them a job. The public service doesn't hire people to do a job. They hire people to give them a job. They want them to get a job. And when you hire those people, you have to make something for them to do. So it's like you hire another gear. So then you have to put another gear inside of the machine. And then the machine has to spin a little bit more so that gear gets a chance to spin too. You know, that gear gets something to do. He gets a chance to spin and make some money too. That's the public service. So one of the quickest ways to do it is you remove a lot of those extra gears. We have so many gears inside of this machine. Take out those gears. What you would realize is that we don't need 30,000 gears to do it. We have 15,000 gears, and those 15,000 gears would do it just as strong. Starting from the cabinet. Fully agreed, Hollow Point. Fully agreed. And that's why one of the worst things that we saw with the previous administration in the partnership was the expansion of the cabinet. That government, and you see, that's the difficulty in Trinidad and Tobago, you know. I dislike the PNM government, the level of bureaucracy they have, the way they lock down the free market, they lock it down to the status quo. It's very hard to get business done. But the other administration, when they were in there, they expanded the government services like wow, everyone got a government job, and that even increased the bureaucracy more, which increased the corruption more. And if the corruption increases more, then the police have more things to turn a blind eye to, which in turn increases the corruption inside of the police service. And if you have a corrupt police service, then surprise, surprise, violent crime increases too. Them union leaders will have fun with that. Listen, that's nearly mission impossible, you know. That's nearly mission impossible. It's very difficult to decrease the public service. But I think it's necessary. If we're talking about decreasing the bureaucracy, if we're talking about decreasing the corruption in Trinidad and Tobago, that's an important part of it. And the reality, you see, that's the reality when we're talking about these things. Trinidad is corrupt because there are many people in Trinidad and Tobago who are very fine going to work, working for 8 hours and collecting a salary every single month with doing nothing for that job. They know they do nothing. They know they wear their Van Heusen fitted pants and Van Heusen fitted shirt and go down in Port of Spain and buy food for lunch and buy food for dinner, and that's all they do. There's no value added to the country by them going into Port of Spain. All they do is create more traffic. That's all. And there are some people fine with that. There are some people fine with that. And if there are enough people fine with that on a country's basis, then they're like leeches on the country. Any surprise that the country would be slowed down by those things? So it says, like we have to shrink the population. No, not the population, just the public service. Kevin says we're the dishonest Trinis who supported 1990 because Robinson made some cuts. Yeah. There are still some Trinis like that. Some Trinis... Listen, and no offense to some of you who may be his supporters in the live, I understand the reason for it, but when I hear the kind of support that sometimes Mr. Duke gets for some of the things that he says, like, we need work, the government should come and give we work, at least thief some money self and come and give we some contract down here now. Those are things that Mr. Duke said. Those are things that Mr. Duke said. And when I hear the kind of support that he gets with saying things like that, I realize why we are in the position we are in. There are many people in this population who would be very fine with stealing from the population. And that's the problem with multicultural populations like we have. Everyone doesn't have that sense of belonging. Listen, if you're in a population where everyone was an extended family, so you're in the same place that your ancestors were since in perpetuity, you would have a feeling like belonging to this country. It would be much more difficult for you to see corruption in the country because people feel like this all belongs to us. But in a country like ours, you don't have the feeling like Trinidad and Tobago is ours. Everyone doesn't have that feeling. People have pieces of Trinidad and Tobago that they believe are theirs, and they wouldn't mind stealing from the other side of Trinidad and Tobago. So I am part of the black people in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't mind stealing from the Syrians of Trinidad and Tobago to the black population of Trinidad and Tobago. I don't mind stealing from the Indians in Trinidad and Tobago into the black population of Trinidad and Tobago. And that's what we have. And that's what we have a lot of. And if you have that kind of disunity where people aren't working together for the entirety of the country as a whole, no surprise really. Nisi says, what Van Heusen do we? Nothing, nothing. It's just something that I noticed. Something that I noticed when I taught quite a bit of lessons in and around the Port of Spain area in St. James and stuff. And sometimes in between my private classes, throughout my 20s, that's what my 20s was for the most part. All around the country, traveling, teaching lessons. And sometimes, in between classes, I'm sitting there in Port of Spain watching the busyness of Port of Spain, and I'm watching people there. And the Van Heusen fitteds was just the thing I noticed. In that 2000s, the 2010s era, between 2010 to 2020 era, when it had all of those public servants coming out fresh out of university and high school, Van Heusen fitted shirt and Van Heusen fitted pants was probably the most sold item. You could just tell they were all wearing it. That's what I was talking about with that. I saw news today, the dairy milk farm asking the government for financial assistance. Is the government always the only investor? I saw though that Nestle was proposing some kind of investment there, so I don't know. And it's a bad idea that the government is the only investor. That's a bad idea. You have to figure out a way for your product to be wanted. If no one wants your product and then you are losing money, if the government invests in it, that doesn't help the country. The government is investing in a product that nobody wants. That's not going to benefit the country. Kevin says Watson Duke will say anything, and there are people in this country nodding in agreement. That's true. He need only wait on the right political moment. And he got it in Tobago. So don't be surprised if he may get it again somewhere else. Cuskel Mind says, I missed the beginning, so now catching up on topic being discussed. Well, Cuskel Mind, for any of you who may have missed any of this live, the live is also recorded on my YouTube channel. You could head over to YouTube, Nathan Spring over there on YouTube, and catch all of the lives. We are on live 200, so there are 199 other lives you can catch up on over on my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring over there on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. It's getting a little late, folks. Any last minute comments or questions before I dive out? As usual, this was brought to you by Mindful Education. Mindful with 2 L's _ education. If you are looking for us over there, we are on Instagram with that username. Good night, J. Chris. It's been a while, so where was? Good night, J. Chris. But yes, it was brought to you by Mindful Education. We offer learning pods where you could send your youth, or if you are interested in learning yourself, into homeschool style classes, homeschool style groups of 6 students or less, where you have that more familiar, closer knit, more understanding learning, where we're seeing much more progress. They learn faster in that manner. We have classes starting from the preschool level straight up to CXC. If you're also interested in one-on-one tutoring classes, you need that extra help for any class from almost any CXC or CAPE subjects. We also do it for primary school, but usually one-on-one isn't exactly needed for a primary school student. But if you need that one-on-one attention, be sure to hit us up. Also, we'd send a tutor out to you. That's all I have for now, folks. If there are no further questions or comments, I will bid you good night. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live, which is going to be tomorrow night, Wednesday as usual, being hump day. Wednesday is Tobago Talk. We're talking Tobago on a Wednesday. Talking Tobago with my Tobago folks. Always enjoy talking about Tobago, our sister isle. So if you'd be interested in that, be sure to tune in tomorrow, Wednesday. Until then, people, peace out. Hold it down. Stay safe. Laters.